Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Looks like there's a little bit of a lag on my part. Not sure what's up with that, but I think I can hear you and see you okay. So how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How have you been?
Good. It's like I haven't talked to you for 4 months or something.
Oh, I just now saw your message. I know it's been like 4 months. Hello.
Well, I guess I'll just start by saying, yeah, welcome for being on Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with Chelsey
Yeah.
Clammer, who just literally birthed this beautiful thing.
Human
Woo!
heartbeat detected. Yay.
You excited?
I'm totally excited. It comes out, I think in about a week or 10 days or something. What day is it? The 22nd. Yeah, it comes out on the 30th officially. But people have already started receiving their copies and have started reading them. So it's really exciting to see it be out in the world now.
I just wanted to say like I'm so proud of you. You've like not that you've come far from the last time we talked. It was only a couple months ago, but I remember talking to you last time, just like how excited you were, and you couldn't wait for it to come out.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take a deep breath and just dive into it here, if you're cool.
Okay. Yeah, go for
Because
it.
I think on my previous episode with my co-host, I was just saying like, and it was totally praised, but I was like, it's a harrowing ordeal, man. Like,
I know it's funny because I
I'm not
wrote the
making light
book.
of it. You know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah, no, it's like I wrote the book between 2016 and 2018 or so, and it was accepted for publication in 2018, and then there was about a year that I had to edit it, and then so I did that, and I got all into the final look, and then 2 years goes by before I see it again for like the final edits on it, and I read like the first 100 pages, and I had to take a pause and sob because I was like, there's so much trauma in this book. It's just like one trauma thing after another, and so it was hard for me to reread it again. And then I had to do it one more time to go through it. And I made it through that one. But when I just coming back to it, I was like, I did not know that I put all of this like essay after essay of different traumas that I have experienced or that I've witnessed other people experience. So it is definitely a hard hitting sort of book to try and sit down and engulf in one session.
true. And I think I'd even reached out to you saying like I needed to take a break from it. Like I like maybe 3, 4 essays at a time, and I was just like, and then come back to it, and then because I think also it's important for a book like this to kind of um, every section of it I think has a weight to it, and it's kind of like you need to, well, I know you lived through it, but as a reader I think it's important to kind of give justice and kind of man, I just had to digest a lot of
Yeah.
it. It was just so
Yeah.
guttural punch. So I guess like I said, we'll go into the hard hitting stuff here. So, do you want to talk about the incident that kind of inspired it, or should we kind of work around it, or?
Well, it's like it the main essay in the book is detect. It's where the phrase human heartbeat detected came from. And I actually wrote that, I want to say in like 2016 when I was still married to that guy at the time. And he read it and he thought it was a really solid essay and we had some good conversations about it. And so eventually, as I started writing more and more, my marriage started falling apart. And so a lot of those essays went into that and it became kind of like the narrative arc. But as I was writing all these different essays, whether about the marriage and the divorce or not, I realized that a lot of them were just looking at the ways in which we can be really terrible to one another, but also can be very beautiful to one another, and the ways that we create trauma in each other's lives and then help each other heal from that kind of trauma. And so it was like that first essay that I wrote, Detect, kind of looked at that, the way that like his mental illness not being taken care of was affecting my life, but then also how he was my husband and how can I take care of him while taking care of me.
Yeah, and that's so true to so many people that I've talked to that have survived trauma, which they say, especially when it comes to relationship trauma or it was induced during a relationship, is just when you're dealing with a burden, no matter what it is, it could be physical, mental, financial, and then you're just literally feeling crushed by that weight. And then whenever your partner's going through something and then they fall on top of you with that other weight,
Yeah,
just becomes unbearable. And
it
that's
does.
um,
Yeah.
so one of the things I was going to talk about here, and I remember the page oh so well.
Okay.
And I'm going to just dive into here. I'm probably just going to jump around in the book because there's so many great things in here. So
Okay.
literally it is page 14.
Okay.
And as you know, I write poetry, and this one line, it's all by itself. And when I read this line, I literally had to put the book down and just go like, you like destroyed me. It was so powerful. Okay,
Oh my God, I'm curious. What line is on page 14?
the cut finally hurt.
Oh, I just got chills. That's right, because I can remember that. It did finally hurt. Yeah.
You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, like that's
I kind of just, microscopic looked at it, but I mean, I'll let you kind of go into that there.
yeah, I had a good conversation through text message with a friend about that essay last night. It's carving out the community, I think what it is. It actually started out as two different essays and they each got published separately. And then I was thinking of like different essays. I was kind of in like this stuck period of my life of writing. And I was like, these two essays speak really well to one another. And so I cut and pasted it and made it into one giant essay. So it's about how like my experience of cutting, and it's a very visceral essay about what it is to be a cutter and the experience of cutting, mixed in with what it is to have a community support you through that and then ditch you in the midst of it, and then finding a different community to help you. And originally the first essay, or part of that essay I wrote, was the part on cutting. I think it was called Cut, actually. I wasn't that creative of the title, but it was called Cut. And I wanted to write an essay that was like the first essay that really looked at the psychology of cutting from a cutter's point of view, and to get into like the facts of it and what it's like to go to a hospital and have to get stitches and the suture kits that they have and everything you have to do with that. So it was like an insider's look that I wanted to create, because I hadn't found an essay like that in the world that I wanted to read to really understand why I had been cutting at that point in my life. And that was back when I talked to my friend about this last night. It was when I was 25, I started cutting. It was back in 2008. So I was like an older cutter, I guess you could say. It's usually like teenagers do it. But I was 25 when I found that experience. And then it lasted until about 2010. I got sober and then I stopped cutting. The two kind of went together. But that's also why I ended up going to that psych ward that last time, where that line comes from, is that for the first time, I wasn't drunk when I tried cutting, and it actually hurt that time. And I was like, oh, this isn't good anymore. I need to stop doing this. And I ended up going to a psych ward. I didn't have any friends at that point. That's what the essay kind of looks at, is it had gotten too overwhelming for them to try and take care of me, because they were trying to take care of themselves. So I ended up going to a psych ward, and then there I got sober and I stopped cutting, and everything's great, and life is great after that.
Wow. Just in reading that essay, and hearing you talk about it right now, it makes me think that it was perhaps for the best, if you had to go through something like that in your life, that it was a little bit later in your 20s, because you were totally developed as a person and you'd had some life experience, where I feel like a lot of teenagers, they're just still living with their parents, or they feel like trapped and they don't have a job yet, or something, and they can't get away. Where I think that from the book and from what you're saying too, it's like you had the mental faculties, you just had to take the self-medication out of the equation, and then you could step back a little bit, it sounds like anyway, and see the big picture and be like, oh fuck. And just have that, like what alcoholics refer to as like a moment of clarity, and being like, God, what is going on?
I remember that morning, because I had like tried finding something to drink, and I drank everything the night before, and I cut, and I was like, oh my God, that hurt. And I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, and I just looked like shit, because I was an alcoholic. I was bulimic at that point in my life too, and I was cutting, and I was just like, what the hell am I doing with my life right now? And so I called the one friend that I had, and she picked me up and drove me to the psych ward. And so it's like, when you're 25, like, how to take care of yourself, for the most part. You're still young, you're still, fresh on your feet, sort of, after being out of college. And I was in grad school at the time. And so like, other ways to express your pain. And so for me, it was kind of like returning to this stage of almost like being a teenager and not knowing how to express how I was feeling. Like the cutting happened because I had been assaulted, and that was like a way for me to reclaim my body, like I have a say with my body. And the therapist that I had at the time, who was absolutely wonderful and saved my life, she was like, this is the way that you're like mothering yourself. You cut yourself, you have to mother the wound, you have to like get it all sutured up and take care of it. And then when that's fine and good, you don't have anything to take care of, because you're not taking care of yourself, so you cut again. and you have something else to take care of. Oh, I just went over there. Hold on. Sorry, my earbuds fell out.
Nope.
So that it was kind of like the cycle that I had gone into, and it made a lot of sense to me.
Okay. So going back to the inciting incident of the assault, in reading it, again, horrible, harrowing incident. I am so glad that you had support group,
Oh my God, it was so important.
people that just rallied around and basically, because it's so hard, for people that I've talked to that have gone through similar things where it's like, there's just that thing, and you say it in the book too, like, did I do something wrong? Did I not do something? Did I not have like a
Yeah.
self-defense kind of, why didn't I take a self-defense class? A lot of people,
Yeah.
and it's all hindsight. It's like, you can't change the past, but
Yeah.
there's so, and you know this too, just people in your life that it's like they don't readily have access to that best friend or loved one or relative within like walking distance, or sometimes even driving distance to make it reasonable. And that's why I think a lot of people turn in on themselves, the self-blame and the doubt. I have a knock at the door. Can I
Okay.
for a second? So,
Yeah. Pause. Time out.
all right. Okay, just
Okay.
somebody dropping something off.
Oh, packages.
All right. So yeah, and that was one of the things I was thinking about, of just, so many people don't have that option or the nearby option. And like, in reading your book, as horrible as the ordeal was, I'm so glad that you had that support group.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm actually right now I'm working on a collection of essays about the empowering women in my life. Total switch. I went from writing about all this trauma and finally was like, I need to write about something other than trauma. Granted, there's plenty of trauma in the book, but it's about the way that women have empowered me. And so I did a reading in Chicago and I read an essay from that. And it was about when I was assaulted, I was actually working at a feminist bookstore. And so I was like, it's a line and it's like the best place you can work while you're assaulted is at a feminist bookstore, because you have bosses who understand you need mental health days. You have coworkers who understand that you just need to like sit and cry in the back room for a little while. There's like a whole section of books devoted to the experience that you now have had. And so I was fortunate at that time. That's where I was working. I had this huge community of feminist friends, and I had been in a women's studies program. So like they spoke the language of what I had just went through and knew ways to take care of me. So I was definitely fortunate with that. And then what's funny is as I had to separate from that community, and they essentially turned their backs on me, I believe, for good reasons, but still, whatever. What I eventually found is that the group that supported me the most was the group of writers that I made, like all the writing friends that I met and had. And I think the interesting thing is they are still my main support system, but none of us live within driving distance from each other. One of my best friends is in near Fargo. The other one's in Peoria, Illinois. Like it's just, they're spread out everywhere, but they are my main support group. And so it's interesting to go from like an in-person support group that eventually couldn't support me in the way that I needed support to now have this wonderful group of writers who are spread throughout the country that I see once or twice a year. And that's my support group now.
And jumping ahead to, because what's great about the book is it's all kind of related and kind of intertwined. Another section that really just was a punch to the gut, and for me in a good way, because you're a great writer. So like viscerally, like trying to imagine it in my mind is when you got the box delivered to you.
The 17-pound surprise package. Yeah. Yes. Oh, the box. That to me is one of my favorite essays. I think it's hilarious. The essay is centered on the fact that I got the surprise box delivered for my ex-husband after I hadn't spoken to him for like 6 months. And I didn't know what was in the box. And at that exact same time in the Austin area, they didn't know who, but somebody had been mailing out bombs anonymously to people. And so I had this moment and my friend was like, don't open that box. And I was like, I doubt there's a bomb in it. But then again, like I wouldn't put it past him. Like he was just that smart and just that crazy, like a great combination. And so I thoroughly did not believe that it was, but there was still that little like hint in my mind that I'm just like, it's mailed from the place that these, bombs are getting mailed. I wasn't expecting this package. Like, what in the hell is going on here? So that's the premise of the essay. And I love that one because I had a plan. I actually had a plan. I'm sitting there looking at the box. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to open this and everything that's in this box is going to be like a heading of a section for an essay, and I'm going to tell the story behind whatever that item is, you know. And I was totally going to do it, and then I just was like, I could not open this box, and so I chucked it right in the trash can without even opening it.
Oh my, I mean, when I was reading that, I probably did what I'm right now, just rubbing
Like, oh no.
because you talk about the reference to Seven and what's
Yes.
but it's just, I don't know if I would have got delivered something like that from an ex, if I would have had the willpower to not open it and just chuck it. Because even though, like, I know, for example, like what days the city comes and
oh yeah, right. You still would have been like, no, I'm gonna open it up.
3-4 days from whenever it's dropped off at my door to whenever the garbage is picked up. I'm gonna be like, 3 in the morning, like laying there, I gotta go, man, I gotta go check it out. I gotta know what's in there. Did you have that? I mean,
oh my God. After I threw it in the dumpster, I was just like, done, totally done with this. And I mean, I look at this in the essay, but one of the things that made me just completely done at that moment was I was like, I moved out of our apartment that we were living in a year prior. And so I had everything I need. In the past year, there's nothing that I was like, I wish I had this. Where did this item go? Like, I had thrown out everything I didn't want. And I was just like, there's nothing in that box that I need, because it's been a year and I haven't been missing anything. And so like, I knew it was probably like knickknacks that I had left behind after I moved, or like some of my clothes or some of my books or whatever. And I was just like, I don't need it. I'm done with this marriage.
like that. It's from a store. You can always buy it. It's like, I guess, the curiosity killed the cat kind of thing is like,
yeah.
But what if it's like a knickknack or something sentimental somebody sent me, or I wanted, at a game night with a bunch of friends, or like something from a relative that I didn't, just grab in my initial grab of getting the stuff out of the apartment. But
yeah,
I gotta hand it to you. I don't know that a lot of people would have been able to do that. Like, I don't know. I might have been even out there, like hearing the beep, beep, beep of the dump. Taking them, I'd have been like, oh shit.
Oh shit, it's taking him. Well, here's the funny twist to all of it is that after my ex and I got divorced, 6 months later, we ended up dating again, because it was always like our main struggle was mental health issues, and I thought that he needed to be on medication, and he wouldn't get on medication, which I both understand and don't. But so we had a lot of issues with that. And then after 6 months of being divorced, we started talking again, and he was in a really good space and I was in a really good space. So I was like, oh my God, we're perfect. So we dated. And it was during that time that I asked him, I was like, what was in that box? Because he was like, you didn't open it? I was like, nope, I threw it right into the dumpster. Didn't even open it. And so it was everything that I thought. It was like stuff that I had left behind, little like knickknacks that honestly I think he didn't have the heart to throw away, so he mailed them to me. I'm like, oh, so you gave me all your stuff that you didn't want to throw away because it was too sentimental, so then I could throw it away. Got it.
God, I'm so glad you got that closure, because I would have been like antagonizing over for like weeks, probably. So I guess this is something important too when talking about relationships dissolving and abuse happening in relationships, because you've experienced it and so many people have experienced it.
Yeah.
Which is the time from when the incident happens to when you're finally able to permanently get away. And everybody, I think it's different. From what I've heard, everybody, it's different.
Yeah. And some people never do get away.
Some people never do get away,
or some people like me get away and then go back, and then eventually
and
finally leave.
A lot too. And a lot of people that I've talked to, it's just, and I hate to say it, not to you, but just in a general sense of people that I talk to, and I ask, because I'm just on the outside of the hurricane looking in, and I'm going like, man, you gotta like this dude is a shitbag. Like, you've got to get away. Like, look what he's doing to you, and like holding you back from your dreams. And there's like bruises, and I don't care how you fell down the stairs that you say, that's not what happened. And and they're just, I mean, one girl actually told me like, well, better the devil I know.
That's true. In a scary way, but yeah, that's up your heart. Yeah, I mean, in my own experience, like I had been friends with my husband long before we ever married. And so it's hard, and I see so many couples go through it, is that like you don't enter into a relationship expecting to emotionally abuse each other. And I think emotional abuse is even more, I mean, physical abuse is hard to deal with. Emotional abuse is really hard to deal with because it's hard to point out and it's hard to be like, I am being emotionally abused here. And it can go both ways. You know, there are probably moments that my ex could claim that I emotionally abused him. And I'm sure maybe there were, but it's hard because you get used to not respecting the other person necessarily. In a marriage, you're like, oh my God, you're such a shithead, you didn't put the laundry away, you know, and you don't, that's not really a nice thing to say. And I feel like it can escalate from there. And so it's hard to be stuck in the middle of it, and you're so just like used to, this is what your life is. You're just used to the fact that like I would get really anxious and I wouldn't notice it until it was like 4 hours before he was supposed to come home for work. I started getting anxious because I didn't know how I was going to be treated that night. But you get used to that, that's what the situation is, you know? And so that's why I think emotional abuse is really difficult to deal with. And I always say to people, I'm like, the one way that I finally knew that it was time for me to leave the marriage was that I didn't have one person in my life telling me I should stay. And so I'm like, red flags all over the place, be damned. If I have nobody in my life that's telling me that this person is good for me, then I need to like trust everybody else's opinion other than mine, because mine's a little clouded right now.
Yeah. If you're just on a cruise ship circling the relationship, and every year that you pass, you just collect more red flags, it's probably
Yeah.
time to go.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just, you know, and you describe it in the book as well. And it's something that I've thought about too, where, yeah, it's just the going back to the person, even though, you know, they've hurt you in the past, it's just, there's that comfort, there's that familiarity, the ease of the conversation, and like going back out in the dating world and like it's kind of terrifying and going like, oh, the whole getting to know someone, like, well, we know this someone and we have like so much in common and we like to hang out at the same places and do the same things. So
yeah, and it's hard to I think when you're like stuck in a relationship, specifically in a marriage, because in a marriage you've like made the leap to be like, no, I will stay with you until you're senile. This is what we plan to do. Where personally, I feel like if I hadn't been married, I might have gotten out of the relationship a lot sooner, because I wouldn't have felt that like till death do us part sort of bond with him. And eventually I was just like, okay, no, I can't do this anymore. But I feel like it can be hard also to like see yourself being with anybody else. Like, how am I ever going to meet anybody? Like, how is this going to happen? And I think that can hold people back a lot, thinking that like you can't imagine what your life would look like if this weren't your life. And so I think a lot of it is taking just a leap of faith of being like, I know this isn't good for me. I don't know what comes after this, but this isn't good. So it's anything else would be better than this, basically.
right. And I'm so glad too that during the course of all of these events that, and you mentioned it too in the book, that you needed to pour it out into a book, and you didn't know what it was going to be. It was in little sections, and you know what people might call like a dear diary or something like that. But also having hobbies and crafts, and of course your knitting skills are unparalleled. Like if you guys haven't seen her stuff, oh my gosh, you got to go to her website, chelseyklammer.com. Oh my god. Like,
oh my knitting.
This woman could, I mean, if you wanted to, I'm sure maybe it's in the pipeline, you know, you could probably open a local boutique or have your stuff at a boutique. So
if I wanted to, but yeah, I made a dress that looks like the cover of my book as a way to promote it. I wore it because at the Chicago reading, the book isn't actually out yet. And so I wasn't reading an essay from that because it was a themed reading and nothing in the book fit for the like funny reading we were supposed to do. So I did something else. But so I wore the dress as a subliminal message of like, buy the book, because this is what the book cover looks like. So it was fun to include my crafts and knitting in with the promotion of the book.
That's awesome. And you know, I'm all about like people having like a hobby and you know, and it's a hobby where you're actually, you know, creating things for other people.
Yeah. It's totally like a type of meditation. You get to sit there and think.
Right.
Yeah. It's really great. I love it.
So I guess you kind of address also too in the book about living in different cities.
Yeah.
And, so would you say that moving from like a big metropolitan area to like Colorado and Texas, kind of leaving like the scene of a lot of the trauma, like helped? I mean, everybody, there's that old adage where, you know, a change of scenery will do you good. But like, I feel like in your sense, it was this whole like exhale and then inhale, like literally like wide open spaces, you know?
It's interesting because the sexual assault and the cutting and the large amount of drinking I did all happened when I was living in Chicago. And then eventually, when I lost all my friends, and then I stopped drinking, so that I didn't have any friends because you're newly sober. Like AA meetings are the only place you can go to meet people, and I didn't really like AA meetings that much. So I had one friend, a writer friend, who lived in Minneapolis, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm leaving Chicago. I don't have anything keeping me here, and I have one friend, and she lives over there. So I moved to Minneapolis. And I did kind of feel like I was leaving like the scene of the crime sort of thing, getting away from where all my trauma happened. And so every time that I've gone back to Chicago, like I did a few weeks ago, and visited it, it's interesting because I'm just like, I remember that bar. I remember stumbling out of that bar. I remember that's the street that I turned left on, and then that's where the guy assaulted me. You know, like you see it all. And it's weird to see it like nothing changes, but you've changed. And so you're in a better space and you can see the space differently. But like Chicago's an old city in the sense that it's a neighborhood, a city of neighborhoods that never really changes that much. They might change one building or whatever, but like I've moved away and come back to the Round Rock, Austin area so many times, and it looks completely different every single time I come back because they've built new highways and like there's new apartments up everywhere. Whereas in Chicago, that's not the case. Chicago is Chicago. So it's interesting to go back to that area and see the space where like most of my trauma had happened. But then it's interesting to know that I can be in that city and I'm okay with it. And I don't have to be drunk to deal with it. And I don't have to cut to deal with it. And to see like where I've grown from being in that place.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that also really made a lot of sense to me. And I myself haven't gone through like serious trauma like that, but I can just imagine getting the hell away from where things happened and just literally starting your life over, new faces, new friends,
Yeah.
new work, new hangout spots. I mean, yeah, I had to imagine that was, just a changing event, and it clearly was.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard, like if you experience a sense of trauma and you're still living in that place, it's just like everything triggers you, no matter where you are. Like the door handle that I used to try and like unlock to get to my apartment triggered me because I had a hard time with my keys because my hands were shaking after I was assaulted to get to that door. And so like every single day that I tried opening that door, I remember that and remember the event. And so, you constantly re-traumatize yourself. And so if you're able to, I think after you've experienced something that's so like localized on like this street corner here is where my trauma happened, it's really helpful to not have to go to that corner ever again until you're ready to reface it.
So I guess not just for people and writers that have gone through what you've gone through, but just in general, there will be a lot of people watching this that are maybe essay writers, nonfiction writers that want to know, well, how do I take stuff that I've been working on, whether it's post-it notes or whatever, and turn it into a book? And how did that come about where it's like, okay, now I know what I have is a stack of paper that could be a book?
Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, well, yeah, especially something like this where like this might be a hard sell, or what publisher do I even look for that would be interested in something?
Yeah. Well, personally for me, like I tend to I write essays because I don't think in huge book projects sort of thinking. Like I tried writing a memoir and I bored myself to tears doing it because I was like, this happened and then this happened. And I just couldn't think that big term. I like thinking in smaller, short segments of essays. And then eventually, as I write essays, they start speaking to one another, or I recognize that there are certain themes. And then once I'm like, this could maybe be a book, then I realized like, oh, well, I have this experience that I could write something about, and that speaks to the theme. And then you just keep accumulating and accumulating. And then you go through and you organize the whole thing and cut stuff out and write new things. And so like for Human Heartbeat Detected, I was done with it in 2018. And then it had a year where I wanted to work a little bit more on it. So even after it was accepted for publication, I worked on it for another year. And then by the end of it, there were like 3 new essays I had written that I really thought would fit in with the theme. So even like a year up until its publication, I was like, wait, no, put these in there too. So it's just like you just keep writing, and it, yeah. So I just keep writing, and then eventually I feel like they all talk to each other. And for organizing a book, like you kind of just have to have a gut feeling for what goes where. And for me, it took me a while to figure out the organization of this one, because there are some that are really, really short. I mean, there's a handful of them that are like a page or a quarter of a page. There are a few in there that are funny.
It's great to break up the ones that are 8 to 10 to 15 pages with something that's like a page or half a page.
Yeah. And there are some that are funny and some not. So
and this is like not meant to be offensive, but in a way it's like I would read one of those and it's like a palate cleanser.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I was going for. Like it's sort of like,
yay.
Okay. Or there's the essay in there, graphology. It's like the most fucking crazy essay I've ever read. Because when I reread it, when I was re-editing it, I had to read it twice because I was like, what am I talking about? I don't remember this essay. And it totally like confused me. And I had to read it again to figure out what the fuck I was trying to say. So then I reread it again. I was like, oh, I remember this essay. Okay, I got it. So, I mean, it's a weird essay and it has like my own handwriting in it. And it kind of like starts out really like vague and poetic in the beginning, and eventually like a narrative starts to build from it. But like that's a really challenging essay, and I know it's a challenging essay to read. And so I didn't want to put something right after it that was too short, or right before it that was too like weird also. Like you kind of have to figure out how you transition into the form of what the next one is. So I had to consider that as well, and then think about like topic and theme, and not have all of the essays about my ex-husband at like the beginning, because then it would feel like two different books or something. Right. So if you have a collection of things, my thing to do is to print out each one individually and lay them on the floor and just look at them and be like, okay, what are the themes? What are the topics? What can I do to keep this like not all the crazy ones sectioned in one area? So it's a lot of organization.
So when you reached out to the publisher that eventually took the book, do you remember that initial conversation of, I don't know if you had to pitch it in kind of like your opening letter or something, but do you?
Well, no, it's interesting because Hen Press, my previous book, Circadian, had won their creative nonfiction award back in 2015, and they published it in 2017. And part of my contract for that was that they got first dibs on my next book.
Okay.
So all I had to do was just email it to the publisher and be like, here's my next book. What do you think? Yeah, it was totally easy. And so I'll have clients who are like, well, how do I get an agent? And I'm like, that's a great question. I haven't had to do that. And I've written book proposals. Like for my first book, Body Home, I wrote proposals, I submitted to agents, it got rejected 62 times. And then like a year later, I had submitted an essay to a contest, and the woman liked the essay and asked if I had a manuscript. And I was like, well, actually, I have this book that got rejected 62 times, and she loved it and published it. Then for Circadian, I know, I was like, that doesn't happen. Don't make that be your plan, people. That's not a good plan. But for Circadian, I didn't feel like doing a book proposal because I hate writing them for my own books. I can write them for you all day long. Like as an editor, I can write the hell out of them, but I hate doing them for my books because I'm like, just read the book. You'll know what it's about. So I didn't feel like doing a proposal. So I submitted it to contests where I didn't have to do a proposal. And thank God it won a contest and got published. So then the next dibs was this book, Human Heartbeat Detected, that Red Hen got first dibs on.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's a success story, definitely. So I guess we've got about 5 minutes here. I wanted to see if you had, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but especially younger writers who are just kind of getting into the game and writing nonfiction, whether it's poetry or essays or, you know, long form stories or things like that. What advice do you give them when it's like they're just nervously putting their first things out into the world?
Just put it out there. Like just do it. Because I mean, my whole thing is I'm like, okay, so what do you want to do with your writing? Like, yes, writing can be therapeutic. It can be for you. There's tons of shit that I've written that nobody will ever see because I needed to write it for me. But if like somebody's ultimate goal is, well, I want to be a published writer, well, then you have to submit. Like it's not going to be published if you don't submit. And so it can be really like nerve-wracking to be like, oh my God, I'm going to put this out in the world. But you have to, that's part of it, you know, and it might get rejected 62 times, but that's okay because you find the right place for it and it will get accepted. But you just have to keep going after it and be okay and brush all the rejections off. It's just one person's, you know, opinion, and keep going and believing.
For all you know, sitting at their desk going like, what I tell people a lot too is it only takes one yes.
Yes, exactly.
When you get that one yes, whether you use submittable.com or however you send stuff out, yeah, you'll have that laundry list of just like decline. But after a while, you're not going to remember any of that crap when you get
Yeah.
the one yes. It was
Yeah.
all worth it for that one yes.
Yeah, totally. And that's all that it takes is that one yes. And that's why I submitted to contests a lot, because I was like, someone has to win. So I'll submit.
Please. But yeah, I mean, another analogy is that I use is the baseball analogy, and I say for like 300 hitters for baseball, that means you're literally getting a hit only 30% of the time, and you're considered like an all-star.
Yeah.
So think about that, like what a mental thing that is. Like, in any other job, you're a failure, but it's like 30% of the time you're considered amazing.
Yeah, exactly. It's
30%
true.
of the time you're amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm terrible at math, but for my submissions, I usually get one acceptance every 12 rejections. So was that like 1 out of 12?
You know what? That's a great rate, though.
Yeah, and see, that's what's so funny. It's like 1 out of 12. That's terrible.
You've gone through dry spells where you're just like, oh, what has it been, like 3-4 months? And they're like, we enjoyed reading it, but we're gonna pass. I'm like, you enjoy it? Have you gotten one of those where you're like, real? It's just a backhanded compliment, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I got a rejection once from somebody who was like, I think you need to do this, this, and this with this essay. Somebody else will totally pick up this essay. It's great. And I was just like,
but you're gonna pick it up. Thanks for that.
Yeah. It's a great essay. Somebody will publish it. Not you, but somebody will publish it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the paste email. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
I know you've got the website, so is there anything else you want to plug? I know that, I'll hold up the book here again so people can see it.
Yeah, I'm doing.
Go ahead.
I have a few readings. If you're in Austin, I'm doing a reading at Bookwoman on September 11th, and then I'm doing one in Culver City, which is outside of LA, on September 18th at Village Well Books and a Coffee, I think they're called. I've never been there. It should be fun. And then I also teach classes and do editing through Wow Women on Writing. They're a great little like writing community. Not little, they're huge. They're amazing. But I teach classes through there. They're like informal 4-week-long classes that are really fun. So that's on my website too.
Very cool. So for everybody watching, I'll put a little tag on the end of the video with Chelsey's website, and I'll also paste that in the description of the video. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thanks.
I mean, you're just such a badass to even like, think about writing something like this. I just, amazing. Great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being
Yes. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reading the book.
No problem. I loved it. Yes. All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.